and Israel has the right to respond. This is not me talking. This is Biden talking. This is Kamala Harris talking. This is everybody in America who is responsible, rather than your bigoted guest who believes that everything that Netanyahu says. Netanyahu was not speaking for himself. He was speaking on behalf of an independent democracy, Israel, which has a perfect right to be invited by both Republicans and Democrats.
Okay.
Professor.
You want to silence him.
Professor.
I will do my best.
Professor.
I will do my best to remain
Professor.
calm. I will do my best to remain calm. But I will not sit here
Professor, hold on,
and allow
guys.
this
Hold
guy
on.
to
Hold
refer to
on.
me as
Anna.
a bigot.
Anna, I'm coming to you. Anna, I'm coming to you. Professor,
You are
You're going to let him call me a
please.
bigot?
Professor,
For defending
no.
Americans
Professor,
and practicing
you
their First Amendment
can't
rights?
call Anna Kasparian a bigot.
You want to censor.
Okay? She's
you
not a
want
bigot.
only
I've
your
known her a
view to be
long
heard.
time. You can disagree, but you don't. Hold on. Professor, she's not a bigot. You don't sling that kind of stuff here. You know better than that.
Friends, comrades, I regret to inform you that he does not, in fact, know better than that. And, as he does continue to accuse her of being a bigot after the end of that clip. We'll watch the rest of that segment later in the episode. Anna does great, and part of it gets very funny. But we do have some other stuff we need to cover first, as Pink Floyd so wisely teaches. If you don't eat your meat, you can't have your pudding. But trust me when I say that the pudding is coming, not carrot raisin salad, but pudding. I wanted to start with that clip because it says so much about how cable news discourse about Israel-Palestine tends to go. A disgraced and degraded sociopath yelling at anyone who objects to the mass murder of children by starvation and aerial bombardment, trying to shut down their argument by spuriously accusing them of anti-Semitism. To get personal for half a second, as someone who actually has had an anti-Semitic comment directed or two directed at me over the course of my life, part Jewish, I look like it, I probably fulfill a lot of stereotypes. The cheapening of that charge to run cover for apartheid and genocide makes me angry on multiple levels. But personal feelings aside, the part that's the most wild to me about that clip is Dershowitz defending his war criminal friend by saying that Israel is a democracy. And no, I'm sorry, but it's not. Millions of people who live in the country are deprived of citizenship and voting rights in Israel because they have the wrong ethnicity, and granting them those rights would undo the Jewish character of the state. That's a phrase that Israeli politicians have no problem using. And they're also not allowed to secede to form a separate state of their own. Dersh's friend Netanyahu has said 1,000,000 times there'll never be a Palestinian state. The Knesset recently voted by an overwhelming margin for a resolution affirming there will never be a Palestinian state. Well, if you've ruled over millions of people for 57 years and you are announcing your intention at every opportunity to rule over them for another 57 more maybe, and you're never going to let them have citizenship rights in your state, I'm sorry, what you're describing is not a democracy. That's the core argument that's always seemed most powerful to me. And part of the reason I'm bringing it up right now is that I have a pamphlet coming out from Everyday Analysis, which is a small press that's also published pamphlets by such luminaries as Slavoj Žižek and Jason Myles, called 4 Essays on Palestine. I talked to the editor, Alfie Brown, and he said copies should be arriving in the U.S. in time for me to do a launch party in Los Angeles in mid-September. I'm working with our booking agent, TJ, right now to see what that looks like. I assume Jason will be there.
I would hope so.
Possibly.
My feelings might be hurt if I'm not involved with it.
Possibly. Yeah, definitely some familiar faces. So that's something to look forward to, and it's available for pre-order now. We've got the link in the description for this episode. Down below that box where you are watching us talk right now. And the first 2 essays reprinted from Jacobin lay out my basic case on democracy and human rights and the genocide right now going on in Gaza. The second 2 essays are one that's also from Jacobin that was way more controversial on my side, called No One's Rights Should Depend on Where Their Ancestors Lived. And the last is reprinted for the Substack. It's called Marx and Rawls versus Nozick and the Land Back Left. and it covers what I think are the deeper issues involved in that controversy. And there's a introduction that's new for this pamphlet tying it all together, and to my mind, it's a very simple tie-in. I think that some of my friends and comrades make the mistake of opposing what's going on in Israel by trying to reject Jewish ethno-nationalism, also known as Zionism, in favor of a kind of vicarious Palestinian ethno-nationalism that says that every single Israeli is a settler, even if they're a fourth-generation resident of Tel Aviv who's never been to a settlement, and in the ugliest and dumbest cases, even kind of rooting for Hamas. And I think that's wrong in principle, but it's also strategically, I guess we're not supposed to say retarded, but unwise to the most extreme possible extent. In a country where even if you grew up in Iowa and you don't know a single Jewish person in real life, you can probably think of a dozen Jewish actors or comedians or etc. you have basically positive attitudes about, but most Americans probably couldn't name a single Palestinian who's not, somebody the media would label as a terrorist. Trying to get them to reject Jewish ethno-nationalism in favor of vicarious Palestinian ethno-nationalism, good luck with that. Trying to convince them to reject ethno-nationalism of any kind and oppose Israeli apartheid, the genocide in Gaza, in the name of universal standards of democracy and human rights, that one feels to me like an argument we can win. And that's why I included those last two essays. I think this is a fight we need to have, even if in some cases I'm having it with people I like, to get our heads on straight about how to make this case. And speaking of democracy, I want to talk about one other thing before I bring on my best friend and podcasting comrade at arms to talk about his excellent new essay, This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get. And that also involves picking a fight with someone on my side. I'm sorry, I try not to do that willy-nilly, but sometimes it's got to be done, because when you start talking about democracy, if you take it seriously, you need to talk about extending democracy from politics to economics, achieving a society where everyone's needs are met, and some people don't get to spend all day giving orders because they have money, and other people don't have to spend all day in the workplace taking orders because they don't. In other words, socialism. And I think that if you're serious about achieving socialism, the theory of history and economics that's going to be most useful to you in order to understand where we are in the capitalist phase of human history, how we got here, how we can break through to something better, is Marxism. And I saw this video that's been going around. It's just a 1-minute video of Chris Hedges explaining why he's not a Marxist. And I just wanted to briefly address it and say a word about why I disagree.
What, in general, do you think Marx got wrong? I think Marx's vision of the classless society and the withering away of the state, the kind of deification of the proletariat, I think those were all wrong. I take a much darker view of human nature than Marx. I think in that sense, Marx's vision was not achievable. But as I said earlier, I think that his analysis of the system of capitalism was brilliant. It's Marx's utopianism that I don't embrace. And I will go to Julian Bendis, that those of us who are intellectuals or writers or dissidents or artists or whatever have to always be in opposition to power. In that sense, I share Chomsky's embrace of anarchism. You can serve either justice and truth or privilege and power. But the more concessions you make to privilege and power, the more you diminish your capacity to fight for justice and truth. And I think that's something that Marx never saw.
And I want to make it clear that this is not a video of Ben Shapiro and dunk on it sort of situation. Chris Hedges is a serious person. He's a smart person. And he's a person who has humane and egalitarian values I can admire. I don't have the slightest doubt about any of that. But I do very thoroughly disagree, in particular with two things from this video, which are related. One is he accuses Marx of deifying the proletariat. That's just wrong. The other is that he says he doesn't think we can achieve a classless society because he has a darker view of human nature than Marx did. And I think that's mixed up too. So Marx is interested in thinking about how society works at the most basic level, where the food that everyone eats comes from, how most of the population spends most of the day. And he has an analysis according to which the working class majority of society has been forced to spend part of every day working not for themselves, to meet their own needs like they'd have to do regardless of how production was organized, but to enrich the people that they had no realistic choice except to sell their working hours to in order to make a living. And he focuses on this group not because he deifies them, and not even because he thinks they're the most oppressed or the worst part of society. In fact, people who are unemployed and unemployable, living off petty crime, prisoners, people who have to beg for food on the streets. These groups are often way more miserable and oppressed than the working class. But precisely because the working class is the majority of society and it's the group that keeps society going, and all this means that Marx thinks it has both a collective interest in creating a better and more democratic society and the capacity to do that in a way that more peripheral groups just don't have that capacity. And that's why he's focusing on them. And that goal, a truly democratic society that's not divided into classes, doesn't require being cynical about human nature. Doesn't require not being cynical about human nature, rather. Right? Doesn't require that you have a not dark view of human nature. In fact, a lot of Marx's economic writings are precisely about how it's not realistic to expect capitalists not to act on the incentives the system gives them, by power of their virtue or whatever, because how greedy or virtuous people are is kind of beside the point. And I would argue that Marx's goal of a classless, truly democratic society is one that's actually more salient if you have a dark view of human nature. After all, the more you think people are going to be kind and generous and cooperative, the less it matters if some people have more economic power than others, because you can just trust them to act on the better angels of their nature. People won't step over homeless people on their way home from the brokerage. They'll use what they have to help them and get them on their feet. Capitalists won't treat their employees the way Jeff Bezos treats warehouse workers or Harvey Weinstein treated aspiring actresses. Whereas the darker your view of the dark side of human potential is, the more you worry that people will act in those ways, given the power to act that way, the more you should want a society where power is distributed as equally as possible, so we have less space to abuse each other. And that would be my case to Chris Hedges. But on that note, I do think we've had enough meat for a minute. And I think it's time for a little bit of pudding.
And you stand there looking at it, and you try to make it look like McDonald's, so you rip the edges off around it, make it round, and you got green peppers and grease running down your hand, and your mother say, now go on outside and play. And the other kids got McDonald's. They outside going, we got McDonald's, hamburgers, McDonald's, I got McDonald's. And you stand there with this big house burger. And kids are honest, they say, yeah, where you get that big welfare green pepper burger? And you cry.
Yeah, you did. Hey, I wrote the thing and I wouldn't have done that on my main show. So props to you for having the intestinal fortitude to challenge the machine that is YouTube and play what I still think is maybe the funniest stand-up comedy movie of all time in Eddie Murphy's 1987 classic Raw.
Yeah, well, I should say I am joined by our very talented graphic designer, J. Andrew World, our super pretty... Hold on. Where's Jake?
I thought he was with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, life gets in the way every now and again. Jake is not joining us tonight. Don't worry to all the Jake heads out there. He is going to be back next week. But we are joined by This is Revolution.
This
is Revolution. Jason Myles, musician, podcaster, and writer. And I think that this essay that we're about to talk about, that's kind of kicking off from that Eddie Murphy bit, that I hope to God that Jake sped that up enough that we don't get a copyright thing over it.
I have my fingers crossed for you as well, because cut a clip from it, make a short of it. It's I watched Eddie Murphy Raw. I think I was 11 or 12 when I got to see it. I know I was young. My mom had some sort of bootleg copy, and I watched it, and I was like, I always thought Eddie Murphy was like the coolest person in the world. And after I watched Raw, it kind of cemented the fact that Eddie Murphy to me is the coolest person in the world. And I've been seeing these memes of we got such and such at home. And I think, Ben, you showed me the other day, I think Matt Christman posted some movie.
Yeah, it was the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. The movie.
I know this was a joke. It's an Amazon movie.
No, that's a real thing. Yeah. And Matt posted the poster for that. It said, Mom, we've got Inglorious Bastards at home.
Yeah.
Glorious Bastards at home, and that's the poster for the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Yeah,
and
exactly.
It made me think of that Eddie Murphy routine that you just played, or part of it you just played, because I think a lot of people, definitely the people on this screen, have had some sort of replay of that scene where you want something, and your parents either don't have the money, don't have the time, don't have the want to get you that thing. And it's usually McDonald's. There's something about golden arches and playgrounds, the McJail they used to have in the front of some of the McDonald's when I was a kid. I'm sure you guys had them where you guys are from as well.
Really hot slide.
They'll burn your behind right off, the McDonald Land cookies, the magic of the Happy Meal
McDonald Land cookies. Those are good.
All these things.
I actually went into McDonald's not that many years ago under the impression you could still get those cookies. It made me so sad.
No, they went with the home baked in the 90s. Trust me, Ben, I was with you that day too. That was also the same day I think I found out. What do you mean breakfast is over at 10:30?
What the fuck? How? Why?
Yeah, what do you mean? I'm here for a big breakfast. It's 10:45.
Did you have like a falling down moment?
That's
my mom,
which is, by the way, also a line. And we're rolling the dice enough with the copyright Stasi by playing as much as we did. But there's also a great line in there where Eddie Murphy is describing his mom after she's like, we don't go to McDonald's, we got burger meat at home, and she's like asking him to grab things for her in the cupboard as she's making it, and like there's green pepper, there's and it's like there's no green pepper at McDonald's, and it's just like and an egg is like egg. No, you're thinking of the McMuffin.
Yeah, when he says we don't have any hamburger buns, all we got is Wonder Bread. That's what I said. Give me the bread from the bread box, and it's like, if you've never had a parent burger on regular ass bread, then I'm just going to assume you've lived a very privileged life, and we are not the same person. Right?
I didn't know. I was like an adult when I found out you could buy hamburger buns.
So my parents did buy hamburger buns. That's true. But I will say I can recall some real life moments. I almost feel bad that I'm, throwing them under the bus by saying this in public, but but I could definitely remember some moments of, we can make French fries. Isn't that great? We can do that at home. And you're making these things in the oven. That's like,
in the oven. Oh, no.
Oh, come on.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same. I definitely had that. My grandmother, God rest her soul, I can't remember her making me a hamburger with a regular bun. She didn't have Wonder Bread, but it was wheat bread. But there's something about that reminded me of my life, and I opened up the piece with that. I try to replay that for people if they don't know it, because I don't know who's reading this. I don't know if you're in your 20s and you don't know who Eddie Murphy is. For a lot of people, Eddie Murphy is Dr. Dolittle. And for us, he's the guy from Saturday Night Live that's very edgy and hilarious. And so, the whole piece is about politics, right? And there's this great song by this band called Pill, Public Image Limited. For those that remember the Sex Pistols. Just
thinking they're might be people who are just this much younger than me for whom the most helpful thing to say would be Charlie's brother.
Oof. Oof, that doesn't even feel right saying that. Yeah, I guess you could say that. His movies don't hit the same way because I think he's just older and.
But I mean, the Chappelle skits. I mean, that's like the best thing that's ever been done with the form on television. Like,
man, the true Hollywood stories of Rick James, and the Prince.
They made pancakes.
Those are legendary, because there are also these crazy stories of a life that most of us can't understand, like hanging out with Rick James or hanging out with Prince to the point where you're going to go back to his house and play basketball. You can only do that when you're Eddie Murphy's brother, right? You know, me and you are never going to get asked back to like Hassan's podcast mansion for some sort of weird orgy. So we don't get to have those fun stories.
Yeah. That seemed, I was going to say something else, but I'm going to leave it right the fuck there. So I cut you off when you said you were starting to talk about the song.
Yeah, the piece is called "This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get," which is a song. I forget the name of the song. Something about death. I can't remember. But it's a song from the band Pill, which is Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols follow-up band, which I think played more into the situationist vision of what they were trying to do with music and really call out capitalism in this really arty way. And the song just repeats, "This is what you want, this is what you get." and I thought about that with the whole Kamala Harris thing. And as I was writing this out, and I kind of had to go give a little bit of historic context for my whole curiosity for this whole moment that we're in, because it's a moment where I don't think anyone could have predicted where we are in 2016. Like if you would have told me in 2016 at the beginning of it that the dude from the reality show would step right off the reality show set into the White House, I'd look at you kind of strange and think, man, what did Hillary Clinton do to F up so bad? And I thought maybe we'd be a little more serious. But there's two things that happen, and I talk about that, which is Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump happen at the same time, which is kind of this almost magical kayfabe moment where people start to see how the sausage is made to a certain extent with politics, because people are very frustrated. 8 years of Obama, we didn't get the hope and change that we thought we were going to get. Obamacare was not Canada-style socialized medicine by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't think people wanted Hillary Clinton. I don't think people wanted Jeb Bush. And we love personalities in this country.
Wait, you mean nobody wanted Jeb Bush? This is news
not
to
really.
me.
If I give it, it's like this though, Andy. If I give it to you, you'll take it, which is what I was getting to with the piece. Because in the piece, Trump wins against a very unlikable Hillary Clinton, which is a woman that's been unlikable since she was the president's wife. Right. And in 2020, the country is just exploding in these protests over rogue law enforcement and the carceral state. We're talking about the carceral state on mainstream media in a way we've never talked about it before. Mainstream media is constantly covering kind of overstepping of police. And it's not just the same George Floyd stuff over and over, even though that video, I think in the first 3 months it was released, was showed over 1 billion times. It had that many views total. So
God, how would I just imagine being a member of that guy's family. Like, how do you feel about your loved ones' dying moments? Right? Being
t-shirt fodder. Yeah.
T-shirt fodder, being the most viewed thing on the internet. I don't know. I don't know what, how I'd feel.
I've been to Minneapolis since that's happened, and there's murals of him around the city, and it just seems like a weird thing to see like your loved one up on a mural like that.
Well, thank goodness most of his family's in Texas, but imagine seeing if you know people like that and you were friends with them. Imagine being like, damn, the same people that drew this mural, the same people that would have locked their doors had he walked by.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I like the fact that my good friends is able to achieve a certain level of humanity in death that he wasn't able to achieve in life.
I mean,
go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, it's obviously not even in the same discussion, right? But it's you know, obviously is somebody I knew very well who, after he died, you know, kind of seeing the way that people would kind of romanticize the guy and like, you know, and turn him into this plaster saint bothered me a little bit. Right. Cause, you know, this is like this is a human being who was complicated and, you know, was also like one of the funniest haters I've ever met. Right. You know, and so sort of like, you know, like seeing him reduced to like the, you know, sort of saintly quotation, you know, about kindness. You know, I don't totally know how I feel about that, but yeah, I could only imagine, you know, for anybody who knew George Floyd, right? You know, how strange that would be, just because I would assume, again, you know, it's just how anybody would feel in that.
And that's the problem with the idea of the perfect victim, though, right? You know, that's an issue that I have, because I worked with the unhoused and kind of lived amongst them for a time in my life. And no one's a perfect victim in that world. And from the outside, everybody who's with me is kind of a criminal or a horrible person, just like society's denizens. And, you know, working in that world gave me, sorry for taking so long and rambling a bit, you know, it gave me a certain amount of compassion, I think, that maybe I had a little bit of, like most people, but it definitely grew leaps and bounds when you understand certain obstacles people have and definitely crimes people have committed. It's not who you are for the rest of your life. And it's fascinating that we have to create these perfect victims, because the perfect victim narrative, it falls apart real easy, especially with a person like George Floyd, who actually served prison time for a pretty heinous strong arm robbery. Just because he committed that crime, he did serve his time for it. I don't think that he deserves to get killed by law enforcement. And when there's too much saintly, if you're throwing too much of that saintly stuff on someone like that, then you're going to get people that want to repeal a little bit, even if they don't like what happened to them. They'll justify it in their mind because there's too much glorification of the human, and that's why I don't really dig that. And,
I mean, it's also you know, I mean, you remember, like, you know, before 2020, because 2020 happens, like, that's not the beginning of any of that stuff, right? I mean, like, that's the culmination of it. It had been building up since God, I mean, when was
2014,
Ferguson?
right? Ferguson's 2014, so let's just say Ferguson.
Yeah, right. So I've been building up for 6 years, and I feel like there was a point where, at least from Ferguson onward, maybe from a little bit before that, I remember that there were all these news cycles that were dominated by police killings, which we don't seem to do so much anymore. Note, not because nobody's killed by the police anymore, right? Like, it's not like that just stopped happening somehow in America.
No, it actually is happening more than it did in 2020 right now.
Yeah.
There's that.
But, like, you know, for whatever reason, this was a period of time in between those two things when the discourse seemed to be paying a lot of attention to it. In a way that it did much less before, and it has much less since. And you get all these news cycles about, you know, Michael Brown, about God, who was the guy who was who was killed because he like told the cops that he had a gun in his
not Alton.
Fernando Castillo.
Yes,
Philando Castillo.
Yes, exactly right. So there were all these cases, and there was always this cycle where people, you know, conservatives would dig up something incriminating about them, and, you know, they always use this phrase like, "Oh, he was no angel," and I always wondered about it. It's like, are laws only supposed to protect angels?
That's
like
it.
Everybody who's not an angel is just fair game to kill them.
That is it. If you haven't lived a life of pure good, then you deserve everything that's ever happened to you and more. We care more about vengeance than we do justice. And I don't even think we blur the line anymore. That's just what it is. Vengeance equals justice in the US context. And when it comes to someone like George Floyd and all the other people, because again, 2020, to your point, doesn't happen in a vacuum. I think it's Charlottesville. I think it's Trump's very good people on both sides. I think it's build a wall. I think it's kids in cages. And then it's COVID shelter in place protections. And by the time you get to George Floyd, which you already had Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery earlier that year, where Breonna Taylor is shot with a no-knock warrant to get the wrong house. And Ahmaud Arbery is a guy who walks into an abandoned construction site and someone shoots him because they think he stole something. So everybody's frustrated. BLM has gotten a bit of a second life from the 2016 election anyway. We're talking about things like reparations because of the rise of someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates, which happens around 2014 in his case for reparations essay, and some of the other books he writes where, being an N-word is just inherent to all Black people, regardless if you read Dungeons and Dragons or not. So, and that was a dig at him. And by the time you get to the George Floyd moment, it's the match that lights the powder keg, and it's an explosion that I had never seen in my lifetime. And I'm old enough to remember the LA riots.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from California, but I'm from 6 hours north of LA in the Bay Area, and we didn't have anything close to the level of what happened in Los Angeles. And so to see these things happen kind of everywhere, of course, Minneapolis might be the epicenter of that, but there are fiery protests everywhere.
Yeah, I wonder if you have to go back to the 70s, maybe even the late 60s, to like find something quite on that level where like there are these, sort of mass riots going on, not just in like one city, but all over the country.
All over the country, everybody's kind of on board for the same thing, but a lot of it is just rhetorical. And we're all these calls for it's not a knock on you, Jay. I know Jay. I think you met Jay in New York.
I did meet Jay in New York.
Yeah, sweet kid.
Yeah. No, that was a knock on Ta-Nehisi.
That was knock on Ta-Nehisi Coates. But that moment, I actually thought for 5 seconds, I was like, depending on who gets a hold of the people, this could be a moment where we actually see some sort of substantive change. And, where does that energy really get funneled? It kind of, for the most part, it gets funneled into the Democratic Party. So people are asking for, kind of back to the whole, we have social change at home. People are asking for police reform, carceral reform. To some degree, we're still asking for Medicare for all. To some degree, you have a larger movement of forgiving student debt. A lot of this is due to the Bernie Sanders moment in 2016 and what comes after Bernie Sanders, which is all these people winning federal and state and city seats on the Bernie platform of Medicare for all and free college and yada, yada, yada. Kind of the democratic socialism is ultimately what a lot of people are asking for. Even if they don't know exactly what they're asking for democratic socialism. And
I mean, you kind of have two currents going on here, right? And they're not unrelated. They definitely overlap, right? But there's the police violence current that like we've been building since 2014, and there's the democratic socialism current, which I mean, a kind of similar time frame, right? Because Bernie starts running for president the first time in 2015. Although I don't think when he starts, anybody, very much including him, thought that was going to be anything, right? I mean, if you watch the clip from 2015 of Bernie announcing his first run for president, he's like, I mean, he like did a press conference, but like it was so obvious if you watch it that he was just like that he just kind of did it on his lunch break. You know, from the Senate, there's like a handful of reporters. He literally has a speech folded up in his pocket, right? I think the first thing he says is, "I'm not going to have a tremendous amount of time to answer questions," right? And like he reads off these notes from this little thing he folded up in his pocket. But it became a big thing because it spoke to the same social ills that, you know, in a different way, I think fueled the mass discontent about police violence, or at least overlapping social ills. And I mean, I think that's maybe like a point to add to the story that you're telling here, right? Because because one other thing that strikes me about George Floyd's summer is that this is something that happens after the sort of final defeat of that Bernie wave, right? That they, you know, Bernie wave is 2015 through 2020. And I don't know, I mean, maybe this is narrativizing too much, but like, it does seem like that offers like a path towards, you know, a society that's going to be less cruel and unequal, and, you know, at least sort of gestures in that direction. And that's just gone down, right? I mean, you know, we just had the triumph of establishment politics over all that, right? That it's going to be either, you know, by the time all that happened, right? You know, we were down to Joe Biden or Trump, right? You know, that those were the options. And so it does kind of make sense to me that energy ends up getting manifested in this other way, right? Because it's like, well, you know,
because we got social change at home, right? That's what we tell you, you know. Everybody wants change and defunded police forces, and then the Democratic Party looks you right in the eye and goes, "Oh, we got social change at home," and then they put on kente cloth scarves and then kneel, and there you go. You know, you wanted social change, you got it. Hey, Nancy Pelosi with kente cloth, and she kneeled. She's like 1,000 years old, and she kneeled. That's not true. Easy. She didn't do it. She did it for you, man. So fuck are you whining about?
I think I told you earlier today, I feel like about once every 6 months, I remember that really happened.
And you forget.
And it's like, that can't possibly be real. This has got to be some Mandela effect thing. I've got this image in my head, but like, you know, come on.
But isn't that the
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer were not kneeling in kente cloth?
Kneeling, and you go, whoa, okay, that's interesting. And then Joe Biden, and a lot of people forget this, I think, during that campaign process, first of all, in 2016, Joe Biden is not in the race because he's retired. He's done with politics. I don't know who thought that calling him up made sense, but there's this clown car of Democrats that they roll out to try to stop Bernie Sanders, much like the Republicans try to do with Trump. And it wasn't really working. They thought Elizabeth Warren was going to be the bee's knees for a while, and that didn't really work. Kamala Harris had a moment real quick where she crapped all over Joe Biden, and then Tulsi Gabbard came the next debate and said some untrue things. But it doesn't matter, right? You're just slinging mud.
Some true things, some untrue things. There's
she stretched the truth.
Yeah.
She stretched the truth.
You know, it is also worth noting, by the way, since now, you know, we've entered into the coconut era, that all this becomes relevant again, that when Kamala Harris did that very choreographed hit on Biden, you know, I was the little girl on the bus.
I was that little girl.
They already had the I was that little girl t-shirts all ready to go at the Kamala Harris, you know, website. Like, look, the premise was 100% true about Biden, right? I mean, that was a totally fair attack on Biden. But somebody like a day or two later finally got around to asking her, like, well, what's your position on that? And it's not that different, right? I mean, that's like, she doesn't want federal level, you know, busing. Like, she's not going to go out and advocate like that. So it's, it's, you know, I think there's a lot of sucking to go around, which is, I think, going to be relevant later in your story, because it is kind of amazing to me, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way. I'm just saying, you know, it is what it is. That the level of optimism that, you know, the left, such as it is in the United States right now, had not that long ago, has been leached away to the point where, like, you know, not anybody on this screen, I think they expect it from us, but like, there are other people that I know in very much the same kind of space who've like had people get, like, in their audiences, like, get really mad at them for being too mean to Kamala Harris. And it's like, how far does the bar have to get lowered to the point where it's like, all right, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be senile grandpa Democrat. It's going to be like young normal Democrat. All right, we're good. Right?
Like senile Democrat was bad. Like when you go back and remember those Joe Biden stump speeches that he was trying to give, they were just huge messes. The corn pop stories, the black guys are almost as good as white guys, but not quite. All the goofy stuff that man said, he was out of it, and he was polling in the single digits when all those people were out there.
And if we go back to, in the Wayback Machine, to 2008, remember that even back then, like, yeah, Joe Biden made no discernible splash in 2008. I mean, he certainly didn't win any primaries or caucuses.
Yeah, the most he got was saying that Barack Obama was articulate, and that was like
well, that's the thing. I think he literally got picked because he said something that was kind of, you know, eyebrow-raisingly racist about Barack Obama at the beginning of the campaign.
Oh, and he destroyed Giuliani.
And he was like, okay. You know, I think like Obama staff was like, okay, hey, you know what'll really prove that you're safe? If you pick a old white man with a history of saying racist things. It's like, you know, it's like, come on, you know, you can't, like, what's safer than that? Otherwise, I can't figure it out. But yeah, he said Obama was the first black presidential candidate who'd been clean and articulate.
Mm-hmm. And then he also said about going into, you have to learn Indian to go into 7-Eleven or something to that effect. Awesome. in 2008.
Awesome. Because of all the red dots that run the 7-Elevens. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. You know, don't try to be a little covert with the racism. Just make sure it's all on your chest like a freaking tattoo. Someone says, does that mean Harris is going to get Pick Shapiro? I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. Ketanji Brown Jackson as a Supreme Court justice does not make sense with someone like Joe Biden. If people remember, the compromise for Joe Biden was Clarence Thomas when he was in the Senate, because Thurgood Marshall finally steps down and they wanted to replace him with another black person. They would not allow Robert Bork, but they allowed Clarence Thomas because he fit the color profile. So Joe Biden on Supreme Court justices, you know, he doesn't have a very good record. And Ketanji Brown Jackson seems to be maybe accidental. Maybe sometimes a few good eggs get through, but you know, Joe Biden is the architect of the 1994 crime bill, and this is the man that the Democratic Party felt, you know, being that cities are on fire because of rogue law enforcement, let's get the guy that built the prisons. That's who's going to lead the people, and that's the guy that led the people. And you started hearing people say things like, we can just move Joe Biden left. And while these are more online rhetorical comments that weren't echoed outside of our world, it's still ridiculous on its face. Like, how are you going to force someone like Joe Biden to do anything if you couldn't even get your candidate to win some primaries, because it was very easy for the Republican Party to Thanos snap their fingers and bring back and bring back some people from the dead. You know, this is Robert Downey as Dr. Doom right now, right? Joe Biden coming in as president. It's pretty ridiculous.
Did you already play the vice president? Like, you know,
like when you think about that, the whole thing. And I was just sitting down and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I'm gonna write this. I'm sure people are gonna say, yeah, I know, but I'm like, I want you to just sit and think about it in this context, that this is what was happening. And people were like, yeah, this is the guy that's going to defeat Trump. There it is. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So this is, and we should say too, right, that this is, the whole thing, I guess this is the sort of part of it that fit nicely in a graphic for the show.
Yeah.
The layout for the whole thing looks extremely nice, but but this is going to be a weekly feature, right?
A weekly feature. I was hanging out with you when you got back. For those that don't know, Ben and I both had COVID. I think I gave you COVID, or your folks gave it to you. Doesn't matter. You got it. And we were hanging out in our post-COVID doldrums, and I was asking Ben about his Substack. And I do enjoy writing. I write for a few publications, and I thought to myself, what if I took stuff that I would send to publications? I mean, there's a few pieces I've been actually asked to write, right? But outside of that stuff, what if I had a place for it? And also the other guys from the TIR crew that I think are excellent writers as well. And we had it for people in the Patreon as just this thing. If you're a patron, here I'm going to give you these musings, and I call it the Crisis Papers, based off of a book I read when I was a young budding Black nationalist, as many of us are when we're young and colored in the inner city, of a book called the ISIS Papers. And then I was watching this old show from the 50s called Crisis on YouTube. That was pretty cool. So I was like, oh, let's put those two things together, and that way I can keep writing about the world as I see it, and then music and movies.
No, it's really I mean, this one I particularly enjoyed. Being part of that's just because like there's a sort of very dry summary of the Eddie Murphy bit at the beginning. That
very dry. Very dry.
Like after like not having but just reading it in that retelling, right? You know, the other.
I wanted it to be dry.
Because they said that he had a home burger because he was on welfare.
I wanted it to be dry because I definitely wanted to ask some rhetorical questions towards the end of the essay. Right,
it's less is more. Honestly, it cracked me up like reading that description. It's like, yeah, that is what the bit was. But you know, the way that this was framed here is really good, and I like the music stuff. Like it's a very it feels like I know I said earlier today I'm going to stop using this word so much because it makes me feel like a marketing asshole. But like in the space that we're in, it feels like something I don't see much of.
We're in a weird space, man. We're in a weird space, and I don't like to stay in it. I don't know if I jive with all the people in the space. Maybe that's why I don't have as many subscribers as other people. I don't know, because I played music, and I didn't just play it for people that knew who Noam Chomsky was or Karl Marx, right? Usually I played music in front of people that had no idea those people exist. So the show, sometimes I try to come from the same angle. I don't always, but you know, I love talking about music and movies. I think they're a great introduction into having deeper conversations. And that's why everything I write has a musical title. And the repetitive nature of that song, This Is What You Want, this is what you get. Is kind of the way
it's been in my head all day.
It's the Order of Death, by the way.
Order of Death. Thank you so much. I couldn't remember the name of the song. I sent it to Ben earlier today, but the Joe Biden thing kind of baffled me because, again, people come out to the polls in record numbers to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
To stop the fascism, the proto-fascism of Donald Trump. And again, just kind of on its face, Donald Trump pardoned a few black people that were in prison on some like long-term nonviolent drug charges because of the 94 crime bill. He does it at the behest of Kim Kardashian.
It's the most Trump thing ever. That's the
like, say that out loud for a second and remember, this is the world. And when people go, what do you think Jason's gonna happen? Like, I don't Kim Kardashian got people pardoned that were in prison for like life sentences on BS 94 crime bill dope charges, and Donald Trump did it like it was nothing. There's a rapper Donald Trump got a pardon to. I can't remember which one. Is it Kodak Black or something? I can't remember.
But yeah, we like if nothing else, it's like I remember our friend Bronco Marchitich wrote a book called Joe Biden called Yesterday's Man,
and that was the end of Joe Biden. That was his obituary.
Yeah, and I remember like early in the campaign thinking it's like, yeah, it's kind of a shame that the kind of a shame for Bronco that that not a lot of people are going to read this because Biden's not going to matter. Like his as you said, pulling in the single digits, and then it was like, well, plus side people read Bronco's book now that the Democratic Party, as you say, did their Thanos snap, and everybody dropped out to stop Bernie at the 11th hour, and somewhat similarly, I've got to say, right, the thing about Kim Kardashian convincing President Donald Trump, there's so many things about this sentence that if you're our age feel really wrong. Right, Kim Kardashian convincing President Donald Trump to pardon people from prison. That, like, I think about the project you've been teasing for a while about Kayfabe, and the sort of ways in which all these universes have been colliding. It's like, man, at least Jason's got a lot of material for his movie. I mean, when I watched the RNC and saw Hulk Hogan rip his shirt off to reveal the Trump Vance shirt underneath while he screamed about how Trumpomania let Trumpomania run wild in the land. It's like, all right, Ellie, that's good. It's good. Jason's got a scene for the movie.
And what's funny is, and I haven't showed it to you, and I hope that you and I can sit down sooner than later, and I'll show it to you. I'll show you what we have uncut for episodes. Mm-hmm. Without transition screens. And I watched it again recently because I signed this deal with Means TV where I'm going to be producing video essays for Means TV. And they have now all the old video essays that I did. All that goes up with them. And that's kind of another reason why I've been like sitting on Kayfabe for so long. Also, we didn't raise as much as we wanted to raise to get the thing finished. But I called up Alex Michelle, the filmmaker that I'm making it with, and I was like, dude, we got to finish it now. Like, besides the Means TV deal, like, I've never had fate land in my lap. I think I was telling you, Ben, the other day that we had hired a publicity agent when I was in this band with my ex called Le Fin Absolu du Monde, and our publicity agent got us a feature in MTV, and we were all excited about it. We're like, dude, we got this feature. This is great, but the label didn't have the EP done in time. So we had like no tour dates, no product, but we had this really great feature. So it didn't really help. And I was like, man, I've never had anything where all the eggs are in one basket. And then when that happened, I was like, dude, I think this actually might be really big for us. We got to fucking figure out how to get this done as soon as possible, because we have to have it done before the election, because this is insane that we got as much done as we did with wrestling and Hulk Hogan. And if you could see some of the scenes that we have, like that Bernie Sanders scene that you're talking about, is the way we introduce him in the piece. With that scene, as we have Trump going down the gold escalator, we definitely have Trump, getting people over the head. Yeah,
Trump goes down the escalator to give that initial speech. This isn't just some bullshit I saw on the internet, right? This is true. Like those were actually paid actors that he was initially speaking to.
Yeah. Like the guy's whole life is so put together and not real, especially that show. For a lot of people, that was their window into success and power and prestige to a certain degree. And if you saw how the sausage was made, maybe you'd think differently. But I don't know if I believed that anymore. Because I think those two guys told you how the sausage was made, and it didn't really matter to people anymore because, again, we got social change at home. Look at these people kneeling. Oh, you want Bernie Sanders? We got Bernie Sanders at home. It's Joe Biden. He's old too.
Totally, right? I mean, look, a big part of the appeal of Bernie Sanders, is that he was this crotchety old dude who was willing to tell it like it is, and who he didn't really seem like a creature of the culture war. He was concerned with his more important things, and not substance, obviously, but like in terms of aesthetics, Joe Biden always had some of those things going for him. He had. I don't know. Honestly, one of my favorite moments from him in the 2020 campaign was somebody asked him, yelled out a question or something. How many genders are there? He's like, I don't know, at least 3. Which is actually kind of a perfect answer, because what it communicates is I'm not a bigot, right? I'm basically on the right side. But also, I don't give a shit about whatever you're asking me about right now, right? Like, that's what that answer says. And when Biden was elected, it's kind of hard to remember this now, but if your memory stretches back to 2021, there were it was I don't know, how would we do this in the movie flashback scene, where you have to have the music from that year playing, and
it would be Imagine Dragons.
Yeah. 2021. In 2021, there were these endless fawning mainstream media profiles that talking about how Biden was like the second coming of FDR because he'd done like a COVID relief bill, right? Like that's
we're all going to get $2,000 checks. Everybody forgets the $2,000 checks, dude. $2,000 checks are going to be the game changer. And then, was it Jen Psaki? Is that her name? The first House secretary, press secretary. Well, what it is there's $400. No, was it? And then you got the $600.
$600, and you already got that.
And then, if you qualify, we have a packet of McDonald's gift certificates. They're only good on Fridays and the second Thursday of each month. But
this is something I really recommend that people try with their friends. Make a really big deal of promising to give them $20. And then give them $14, and $14. Some of it's money, some of it's gift certificates, and remind them that there was a time a year ago when you gave them $6 and see, and so if you think about it, you really did give them $20 and see how they take it.
Yeah, it's like I gave you a Starbucks gift card with $2.47 on it. It's not enough to buy a drink, but. And that's kind of how it felt after it was over. And it really, hey, this is what you want. This is what you get. This is what you, and you just keep saying that, and you keep saying it and saying it and saying it. And here we are, 2024. They cannot be.
Can't be used for the McDonald's breakfast, though.
Like, inflation is high, and Joe Biden gets blamed for that. There's some factors outside of his control, a little bit, right? A little bit.
No, I mean, there totally is, right? I mean, I guess if we're going to be fair about this, like we are talking about like every single country in the world, right?
It's like nobody could predict what was going to happen in Russia and Ukraine. And of course, no one can predict the total massacre that's happening in the Middle East right now.
And a lot of this, but I mean, like a lot of the, I mean, again, inflation was going on all over the world, and a lot of that was about the disruption of the global economy because the pandemic. There's like, I think that's all true, right? It's just, it's just that at the end of the day, it's like when what you've got. You spend all this time saying it's like, well, we did this pretty good COVID relief. I mean, it was actually not that different from what Trump had done like 6 months ago, but it was, they always like all those profiles would say, oh, we cut child poverty in half, which is also the other half of that thought is that then when they let that expire.
Yeah. What happened to child poverty? Did it just stay up?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's fine now. They cut it in half, and then we're staying on the good half.
Yeah, so it's like, so following the thread of that thought, that would be doubled again when they let it expire, right?
Oh, dude, the wall isn't being expanded where we live, but it's not like I haven't seen more Haitians in Tijuana, right? That can't get through. So he's been horrible on immigration. He's been horrible on the border. Nothing is barbaric as child separation, but it's still pretty barbaric when it comes to the Joe Biden border policy.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, because it's
children all got jobs.
Children all got jobs. Okay, there we go. No problem.
Jesus Christ.
Thank God. Yeah, I mean, immigration is actually maybe the most dramatic example of whatever we got Bernie at home effect with Biden, because it, like, if you really have a long period, you can remember 2018, this was the main reason you were supposed to think Trump was a fascist. Was because of the cruelty at the southern border, right? That child separation, like the sort of really aggressive ICE raids, and like picking people up off the streets, and from all the different places that they were doing that, which was really was barbaric and awful, no doubt about it. But then quietly, it's shifted all the way to, the Republicans are so irresponsible they wouldn't work together with us on this bipartisan border bill that would have like actually done a lot of the Trump wish list. And in fact, Biden is being sued right now by the ACLU and a bunch of immigrants' rights groups because after that bill failed, he did a bunch of stuff through unilateral executive action that in some cases replicates some of what Trump was doing. And certainly, seems to violate a lot of the U.S.'s treaty obligations as far as, letting asylum seekers stay while, their cases are heard, and, et cetera. And like a lot of that push was about taking away due process rights from people seeking asylum. And, all of which actually makes it really scary to me when I see the RNC. I mean, I know when we were talking about it, you said you listened to some of it on the radio while you were driving. Like a real masochist, I sat in my chair and watched it visually. And in what I saw, damn near every speaker for hours said Joe Biden has opened the border. We have open borders. There were signs that were like, clearly nicely printed and, distributed by the organizers people were waving around signs, like every third sign said mass deportations now. So when you take everything that Biden has already done, which, yes, child separation was a sort of barbarity in its own league, right? And Trump himself backed off of that, before he, like while he was still in office. But, if you take an overall immigration policy that's much more continuous than not with what Trump was doing, in fact, if you actually bother to look at the statistics, a higher percentage of illegal migrants were deported after they were arrested in the first 2 years of Biden than they were in the same period of Trump. I don't know if there are any stats yet for 2023. So if you look at all that, and then the fact that like the Republican narrative has been this nonstop drumbeat, open borders, open borders, open borders. We've got to close the borders. It's so dangerous. It's an invasion. It's a catastrophe. Open borders. Then it's like, well, what do they have to do if they win to like make good on that rhetoric?
Yeah, where are the open borders?
I mean, as somebody who regularly drives across the border, it doesn't look very open to me.
No, it's not open at all. It took me quite a few hours to cross it the other day. It reminded me, they're like, oh yeah, it's closed like a motherfucker, Jay. Asking me a bunch of questions. It's frustrating because, like I said, with the Tulsi Gabbard throwing things at Kamala Harris that don't necessarily have to be fact checked.
Yeah.
A lot of the Republican rhetoric I was hearing at the RNC was just a bunch of BS that never had to be fact checked. And a lot of groups just get thrown in. Leftism seems to be popular right now for a lot of people. Marxism seems to be popular for a lot of people. It's still a scare tactic to say that so-and-so is a socialist. Not as bad as it was when we were growing up as young people in the Cold War, and not even as bad as in the early 2000s. But still, it can be a bit of a hindrance on you. So they're throwing that, which I think is weird. And this idea that the Democrats want an open border, I don't know any Democratic administration that's been great on immigration. There's been individual people within the Democratic Party that have worked harder on immigration than others, that have worked harder on like citizenship rights than others. But the only thing I can think of in the last 40 years, there was a real sweeping immigration bill outside of something like DACA, which still doesn't really give you citizenship like people think it does.
No,
was when Reagan signed that bill in '86, they gave like 3 million people citizenship. So this idea that it's a democratic thing, that doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't have to make any sense because the way we gather information is just talking heads yelling at each other. And we're going to take whatever's put in front of us, and we're going to eat the welfare burger. And maybe we complain about it a little bit when we go outside and get teased by the other developed nations. But the welfare burger is hearty and it's delicious, and there's bell peppers in it. And that's the way I feel about Kamala Harris. Like, here's a woman that was not polling well, polled so bad after she had her 5 seconds of, oh, maybe she's a viable candidate. After she goes, I was that little girl. Tulsi Gabbard basically said, hey, your record as a prosecutor sucks because you tried to lock up parents and you tried to keep people in prison longer so they could be part of the firefighter program. That part isn't 100% true. Her office tried to do that. Once she found out about it, she backed off on it, so it never happened.
Yeah, my understanding is that she claims that they didn't know. She didn't know they're making this argument. I think whether she's telling the truth about that, don't know.
I doubt it. You know, she's a careerist. But when I saw the image of Kamala in the white pantsuit, and above it said, I'm with her, I couldn't stop laughing. I was like laughing really loud in my apartment.
Okay, so is that Kamala as Hillary Clinton at home, or is Hillary Clinton
right? I asked that question in the essay because I don't know the answer. Is Kamala the Timu Hillary Clinton, or was Hillary Clinton the Apple Watch from Wish.com all along, and Kamala is the real deal. I honestly don't know, but all I know is this: people that I know that are, for the most part, apolitical. When that announcement was made, their profile pictures changed on social media. Their statuses were Kamala and I'm with her, and isn't this wonderful? And I cracked up because I was like, wait a minute, this is a woman that just wasn't an unpopular presidential candidate. She was an unpopular vice president.
Yeah.
The genius, we now have to say things like the genius of the Democratic Party when it comes to this kind of political strategy is if we keep you in a bunker for 2 years and let this old guy rattle off about nothing for the next 2 years and even, crap himself in a debate, it's not going to take much for people to be real thankful. And they'll be real thankful for this woman that's a name brand that everybody knows. And that's kind of how they did Joe Biden. He's a name brand everybody knows. He may not be good. That doesn't matter. What matters is branding. It's not, are Nikes better than the $9 shoes I get at the Mexican shoe store? It's that the swoosh means I'm not going to get made fun of. The swoosh means it's got a little air bubble in it. The swoosh means it's going to match with my clothes better, right? And that's how we look at politics. And Kamala is the equivalent of a Nike swoosh. She's this thing that you don't really know that much about. I feel very confident that the people watching right now don't know too much about Kamala Harris, even if you're from California, because she didn't do much.
Yeah, and she's always seemed like that. There's in the Simpsons episode where Sideshow Bob gets out of prison. He runs for mayor. There's a point at the beginning where Mayor Quimby, gives in to public pressure and releases him from prison. And he says, if that is the way the wind is blowing, let no one say I shall not also blow. Like that always kind of seems like Kamala, right? I mean, like that it's like, yeah, and she was the, she was, at least in terms of marketing, like at one point it was definitely a look what a tough prosecutor. I was, and then that, we sort of got to a point, not, again, even before 2020 and the slow ramp up on BLM where that wasn't good politics anymore. And she was kind of trying to do this. I mean, she actually was so Kamala really was like 2020 Kamala really was the we got Bernie at home candidate because she, in the Senate, she actually was a Senate co-sponsor of Medicare for All and I think also the Green New Deal at one point. Mm-hmm. And she was like, oh, well, maybe I can, maybe, because she was obviously already running for president in her head, by the time all this happened, right? Well, maybe I can claim some of that mantle, right? From the 2016 Bernie energy. And then as far as I can tell, by the time the primary started, she was very awkwardly trying to find a lane to maneuver into. It's like, well, I can't be the Bernie Sanders 2020 because Bernie Sanders is actually running again in 2020. I could be the Bernie Sanders for people who like a bit more PMC branding and, maybe a little bit more moderate, but hold on, we've already got that too.
Elizabeth
right?
Warren. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I could just be a totally vanilla centrist, but we've got like 5 of those. So she was trying to do this thing that was sort of awkwardly in between, where she was like, well, no, I still support Medicare for All, by which I mean, and then by the time you get through the explanation, I mean, if there's ever been a green pepper welfare burger, of policy, it's by the time you got through her explanation of what she meant when she said Medicare for All, she's not describing anything that anybody means by Medicare for all. It's like, oh, there'll be private Medicare plans that you can compete with the public Medicare plans. Like, okay, you're not talking about the same thing. And then now, like, nobody's paying attention. Nobody gives a shit right now, but at all. But like every day, there's, some newspaper that, cares just enough to follow up on this that will tweet out, oh, we asked Kamala's campaign and they say she doesn't support Medicare for all anymore. We asked Kamala's campaign and they say that she doesn't support the federal jobs guarantee from the Green New Deal anymore.
No.
It's like she's just, it's like the today I take care of all outstanding family business scene from The Godfather, that she's just like slowly bumping off every every good policy commitment she ever had, right? Is getting the Mo Green treatment, for the end of Godfather 1.
Godfather 2, right? Mo Green.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's 2. Yeah. No, it's hilarious. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, but it's like nobody. Like she can do all this because it's like I think just the calculation is it's like the same thing that like the White House does where they want to not get too much flack about it, so they release the announcement on a Friday afternoon, right? It's like this, like, oh, right now everybody loves her. There's never been a better time to announce that she doesn't stand for anything that she ever pretended to stand for in 2019.
Yeah, and she's kind of the perfect weapon against Donald Trump because a lot of his I've never found Donald Trump really funny. So a lot of his joke stuff that he does, like, what are you going to call Kamala? Like, really, what can he call her? And it's not going to backfire on him. So far, everything he's tried has not landed real well. She's not black. It's like, ooh, that's the way you want to go with this? Okay. That's not going to work out real well for you. Yes. She was a bad prosecutor that was tough on crime. You can say she didn't prosecute anybody. Either way, it's not going to really work out real well for you.
Yeah, I think that if I were for some bizarre reason advising Donald Trump, I would maybe say that trying to run on how much you care about who's authentically black might not be your best option in terms of like who you can appeal to and who you can't.
I have to say, Carly Mingus discourse on Rumble has been very fascinating.
Oh my God, because she bought their record?
Yeah. I mean, it took me back because I remember when David Bowie passed away. I realized I didn't have Low, and that is my favorite Bowie album. And so I ran out and bought myself a copy of Low. I don't know what happened to my copy. I don't have, I didn't have it at that point. And so like, I get it. Like, oh, hey, I'm at the store. Oh my God, I love this Charlie Mingus album. Like it makes sense, especially when you change, she's 60. So she went from records to 8-tracks to cassettes to CDs to MP3s back to records, so like who knows where her Charlie Mingus record is,
I refuse to believe that Kamala Harris plays vinyl at her house. If you're Kamala Harris, considering who her husband is, I'm sure they have a really gorgeous state-of-the-art system that plays some sort of like digital technology we've never heard of. And you can hear like the engineer break wind on it, and different musicians doing cocaine in between takes. It's so crisp and clear. So the vinyl thing is just to appeal to the pores.
Did she claim to have listened like in college to
Snoop Dogg
musicians who like weren't like the timeline didn't make any sense?
Yeah, it was like Tupac and Snoop Dogg, wasn't it?
Yeah. She claimed she listened to like hip hop, and she's a little. I don't want to say too old for hip hop because hip hop is just so ubiquitous.
She was talking about.
She was talking about. She would have.
She was talking about. I think the timeline doesn't work out for her.
She wouldn't have been listening to that.
Yeah, she would have been listening to Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy Kane's great.
But she wasn't even talking about that.
No, she was talking about Tupac,
like Snoop and Tupac, and trying to appeal to this younger Gen X crowd.
And immortally, again, it's so funny to me that none of the funny things about Kamala Harris that I know, because people in my world were making fun of them in 2019, 2012. Nobody's bringing any of them up right now. So like, yeah, in those same comments is the, the time traveling, record, listening. She she was like, oh yeah, of course I've smoked some weed, I'm half Jamaican. And her dad famously, like threw her under the bus over it. Like, cause her dad, for people who are not aware of this, Donald Harris is actually this really interesting Marxist academic. I have no idea how people like that keep on having these like mediocre neoliberal children, but
they're rebelling.
Fair enough. But
I mean, in all fairness, she grew up with her mother, and not her father.
But yeah, her dad was like, this is incredibly offensive. I can't believe you're saying this for the sake of some kind of cheap identity politics appeal. And
he was seriously pissed. Also, shout out to the Pod Damn America people. They had Pascal and I on last week, and I think this week an episode that we did with them is literally about Donald Harris. Should be coming out because Donald Harris wrote a very good paper in 1973 about the internal colony theory. So,
yeah, no, I would, I'm probably gonna do something dumb that makes me feel good in the moment, like writing in ceasefire on my California ballot. But I would absolutely vote for Harris for president, meaning Donald Harris.
That's how you get an FBI file in black bag.
I don't know. They might be confused if you write Donald J. Harris.
Donald J. Yeah.
You're safer if you write Donald Glover.
Were you trying to do both of them? Yeah. But yeah, like Harris is this person who really sucks. There's been all this speculation about who she's going to pick as her running mate, which I suppose does matter in a certain sense, that if nothing else, like the last Democratic vice president who wasn't the Democratic nominee at a later time was, the fuck is his name? Arlen Barkley or something, who is Harry Truman's vice president.
Mm-hmm.
All the ones since then have. In fact, everybody except for Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee the next time. And in Biden's case, that's just because he didn't run in 2016, probably because he thought he was too old.
Did Spiro Agnew run?
No. So on the Republican side,
it's a little different.
Okay.
On the Republican side, it's like maybe a third of the Republican vice presidents in that time have gone on to become the nominee. But on the Democratic side, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Democrats are much better at chomping down on the home burger, when instructed to. And so, whoever's been set up as the next guy, they tend to end up supported. But yeah, like, okay, so it matters in that sense. But going back to the core thesis of Jason's article, I've got to say, like, I keep my Twitter timeline has been like nonstop Veep steak stuff, and I kind of don't get it, right? Like, granted, I made my own entry into this genre. I was being a little trollish, but I said, yeah, there we go. Should be Bernie Sanders. But all the people saying that people don't want Shapiro's anti-Semitism. Yeah. My suggestion around that. But beyond that, like this really seems strange and a little bit sad to me, because not that long ago, right? People like, the left in America seem to have these vistas of like really optimistic goals that, is going to try to achieve. Right. And certainly it seemed like there was a time when Bernie Sanders, could be president. Even when you look at the diminishing returns of even something as asinine as people ripping each other apart over force of vote, even there, the premise, right? The people who thought that was going to be a thing, who thought that would be an effective tactic, the premise was, see, all the people who expose themselves as not supporting Medicare for all will then be like voted out of office in this righteous wave after that. And, I never thought that was reality, but at least there is this kind of optimism there. Like, it's like, oh, look, we could achieve these things if we just do this one parliamentary maneuver. We can get like all of these politicians, voted out of office because they don't support this really ambitious reform that we care about. And then, fast forward to a few months ago, and it seemed like, well, we can at least burn it all down and protest and get Biden to lose, because of Palestine. And or at least like wield that threat. And now it's like, oh, just don't hurt me too much with your VP choice. Could you just do could it just be Tim Walz? He seems okay.
Could you just look me in the eye this time when you do it?
I don't know. Tim Walz is so endearing. I don't know if you've been watching the videos that are just popping up of him online, oh, here he is talking about high school football because he used to be a football coach.
Sure, look,
that's sweet.
Sure, I think he's a very likable politician. I actually think we have way more of those in the middle of the country than people seem to realize.
Yeah.
Like it's not that much of an oddity.
I mean, him walking the picket line, honestly, that one like warmed me up to him. But seeing him talk about like fixing his car engine, refrigerators.
I think a likable politician, and I also think I think if you look at when he was in Congress, like he has some votes that were really bad, but yeah, as governor, he signed a lot of good stuff, right? But like, it's the whole thing that hits me about this is it's like, look, how much. I mean, whatever you think about it normatively, just as a descriptive observation, how much do our horizons have to have been narrowed until we've gotten to the point where what we're really invested in is who the centrist politician, who, remember, we hated when she actually ran for president, in the primary, right? That's like what we're really invested in is who she'll pick up who she'll pick as her running mate. Like that is a, like, it's just, view from 10,000 feet. There is just like an amazing retreat here from
it. It also is fascinating to me, and I write about this in the piece, that Donald Trump got kind of all the oxygen sucked out of his campaign, which was a campaign that I think we all thought was going to be, outside of me, thought was going to be massively successful, running against Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And when the assassination attempt happens, I think everybody was like, it's a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump is going to return to the White House and he's going to try to rule by presidential fiat. And, it's just bad news. And it only took the announcement of Kamala Harris in a Hillary Clinton pantsuit and a recycled 2016 slogan to suck all of the oxygen out of that iconic moment of fight with the blood. I think it goes to show that Trump has always been on flimsy ground since he walked out of office, with his head between his legs. And his fans, I don't say supporters, and I don't say base because it's just fans. His fans are much louder than they are stronger in number. And we have to remember that. Sometimes I think we get so caught up in talking about the balls and strikes of politics that we forget to actually read the newspaper and talk to regular people and go, wow, a lot of people hate this effing guy. Even people that would call themselves Republicans or even conservatives, even within his own party, you see he's like taking applications. He's got Craigslist ads looking for people to be part of his cabinet. Because he got, I don't want to say betrayed, but kind of, he couldn't trust the establishment because they don't really like him. He got the tax cuts through, and that's all they wanted. But other than that, I think they see him as a bit of a liability.
I mean, the people he appointed to the Supreme Court, weren't willing to give him the election back. And in 2020, they're like, we're not going to, because I mean, look, ultimately, I think the Supreme Court, it's I don't know. I think it's just like a way more, it's like a political institution in a much more basic way than a lot of people, have sort of wrapped their heads around. They, if you're a very good constitutional lawyer, you can come up with something. But I think the calculation was like, why are we gonna undermine our own authority by doing something really, really unpopular? We got what we wanted from you, right? Yeah. Like we don't need you to be president for the next 4 years, right? This is, why are we supposed to do this for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that, or we don't feel comfortable saying that, because it just feels like Donald Trump is going to suck all the oxygen out of the room again, like he did in 2016, because he was just dominating the airwaves. I was in a hotel when he got shot in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and so I had a television for the first time in a while, and every channel, even like sports channels, where the shooting was the shooting, it was the shooting, it was the shooting, it was the shooting. And I was like, my God, this guy is kind of back to 2016 where everything was about him. And I woke up the next morning, flipped on the TV, looking for a Law and Order rerun. And it was just more Trump. It was Trump. Trump was like, still, like, Jesus Christ, this guy is just, you can't get enough of this stuff. And then, I think I had my computer with me, so I looked at social media because it's not on my phone. And I was like, oh God, it's just Trump. Trump is everywhere. It's coming all over the place. And all it took was the Kamala Harris announcement.
Yeah. Which, like, again, no, like, there's no wave of like, oh, we want it to be Kamala, right? That's the, who is, I mean, I understand there are like, 20 crazy people on Twitter that Andy has argued with for years, who,
but most of them blocked me,
are slavishly dedicated to Kamala. But other than that, I mean, if there had been a primary, this year, so I don't, it's very unclear that Kamala would have won that, right? Like,
yeah. Who would have come out of that primary though? Like, if they would have had a primary, who do you put? Pete Buttigieg. Who was the woman from Minnesota they threw up?
Klobuchar.
Yeah, Amy Klobuchar. Like, who are you gonna throw in that mix that has, again, it's back to branding and the way we see the world. Who are you going to throw into that mix that has the Nike-like name brand recognition, like a Kamala Harris, even if her name brand recognition is mildly nefarious because of the way she's come up in the political world?
Well, I think that, the advantage of a real primary process is that, sometimes you can have senators or governors who, most people around the country don't necessarily, start out being super familiar with, but you see them in debates, you see them campaigning. There's like a year of coverage before anybody starts voting, and then they can start to take off. I mean, to what we were talking about earlier, like, I don't know that most people outside of Vermont were particularly familiar with Bernie Sanders in 2014. right? So I think that, I think that it's possible that if some of these people, your Whitmers and, whatnot, right, had entered into it, and there had been a real, because Biden could have done what he said he was going to do and just, serve for one term and not run again. I know he didn't say it in so many words, but he definitely hinted at it when he ran the first time. And, it's not, it's like Kamala was not a particularly, particularly popular vice president, as you were saying. She certainly wasn't popular before she was, vice president. And the politics of the Harris run have been really, very, very Hillary-esque. I mean, this is, I kept thinking, like, I saw this clip. I'm sure you've both seen it. I know Jason has, but I'm just going to subject everybody to it, one more time. This is from the White Women for Harris Zoom call.
Awesome.
Affectionately known as Mrs. Frazzle, to her combined audience of over 1.5 million followers, is here to help gentle parent us through this election.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to speak today. I am shaking to just be among such incredible company. We are here because, as if you were here earlier, you've heard BIPOC women have tapped us in as white women to step up, listen, and get involved this election season. This is a really important time, and we all need to use our voices and influence for the greater good. No matter who you are all influencers in some way. So tonight, I'm going to share some do's and don'ts for getting involved in politics online and navigating the toxicity that comes with it. And spoiler alert, as much as the toxicity can come from the outside, it can come from us too. So first, don't isolate yourself. We can do our best work when we're in community together like we are tonight, because the toxic each other. But don't make it about yourself. As white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat. And instead, we can put our listening ears on. So do learn from and amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change. As white people, we have a lot to learn and unlearn. So do check your blind spots. You are responsible for your algorithm, believe it or not.
Besides that being hilarious, someone wrote, "Influence or don't, host a segment of your show named The Champagne Room."
I had no clue that people said BIPOC out loud.
Sorry, I was muted. I had my listening ears on.
They stepped out of their room and came into this. That dude. So I've been talking. I don't know if you know Tyler Austin Harper, but he has become a bit of a friend now. And I dig that dude a lot. And he was like watching this thing, I guess, in real time, and he was tweeting about it. And his tweets are pretty hilarious. So I was talking to our mutual friend Touré Reed about it, and I was talking to you, Ben Burgis, about it, and we were both like, "This is like 2020, 2019 all over again." When I think it was like a black person speaking at some town hall meeting or something, and these white people all surrounded him, like their whiteness was going to stop any sort of bullet or a baton or some shit like that. Like, I try to stay out of trouble. I try. And sometimes Ben and I go to this bar. It's a really awesome bar. It is in, I guess it's a dangerous part of town. Again, I'm not looking for trouble. So, if you're not looking for it, it's hard to hit you. But I feel like Ben's whiteness wouldn't save me from anything.
Are we the t-shirt now? That's
like you're white, like Ben can attest to this. Ben Burgis can attest to this because he was in the car when I was being overly black. I was being overly black in a car with Ben Burgis. It was a car full of white people, actually. It was me, Ben, a woman I was dating, Jean Bajlan, and we were crossing the border into Canada. And we were crossing the border in this little bitty part of town in Eastern Washington somewhere. And the border guard was a douchebag, and I yelled at him. And
we had this whole thing on the way from there up to Vancouver about how there should be like a children's show starring this guy, the Adventures of Fascist
Jack. And these people that, there was like two halvesies in the car and Ben. No one's color protected me from possibly getting an anal cavity search from the border guard.
I mean, I was trying to as white as possible to put the protective shield of whiteness in front of the whole car.
No, he's Canadian. He's used to blinding white light.
There was no amount of whiteness that was going to protect any of us from me trying to fight the border guard.
The thought that I might be getting cavity searched at 5 a.m. definitely crossed my mind a few times over the action. Yeah, like this is what we're regressing to. Like it's just this very professional class pitched kind of we're gonna talk a lot about privilege and have affinity groups and put our listening ears on and I don't know, we'll probably unhoused isn't good enough anymore. We'll find a new euphemism for people who live on the streets. We're still not gonna give them a place to sleep. But
fuck that. Yeah, fuck that. Fuck your house, dude. But you're curb adjacent. You're not homeless. You're curb adjacent, and your tiny home is adorable. It's just adorable. And is that your shit bucket? Oh, that is just ingenuity right there. You shit in the bucket and then you dump it right there. Right there. Thank you.
Exactly. But it's good enough because bottom line, like it feels like the 2020 election was a contest about like whether people hated Trump more or Biden more. And you take one of those dudes out of the equation and it's like, hey, how about what do we got here? Mediocre Democrat. How do we feel about mediocre Democrat? All right, good enough.
Like, did they have a bunch of things in like a bingo thing? Just names in the bingo thing. And then it's Bill Clinton and like old presidents have to pick it and read the name. So just Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and then just like Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris? Anyone?
Good enough.
Because like it was like seriously, it's like I am still shocked, and people are like, "Who's she going to be their V pick?" And there's people writing all these like thought pieces on how important the vice president pick is, and my response, and again, Tyler, I think is a brilliant young man. He said something about how important the VP pick is. I was like, I don't know. I remember when Dan Quayle was vice president. Like, you remember that?
I do think though, Josh Shapiro would have a negative effect on the campaign. Because like, we just went through an election cycle where there was enough of an electric out there to say that we don't like what's happening in Israel and nominating genocide Josh over there with all of his other baggage, just doesn't seem like a good move to,
maybe
to turn, Minnesota into a swing state. Like Minnesota's a safe blue state. Why are you trying to turn it into a swing state by nominating Josh Shapiro?
Yeah, maybe. I think that I think what's true is that there's definitely a core of people who, who are mad enough about that I could, if if Gaza is front of mind at the time they're casting their vote, right, it could make the difference in a tight election. I think that's clearly true. I think the uncommitted votes in Michigan, Wisconsin, and other places definitely show that. I think that it's also definitely true that, how much this particular insult is going to be carried between now and the election, I don't, my crystal ball is on the fritz. I have no idea. But it's definitely true to lose a middle finger to those voters. I think that the thing that seems depressing but possibly true to me, I'm not sure, is that the dynamics of the race have changed enough that Harris might feel like she could afford to give a middle finger to those people, that's not going to hurt her enough at this point. So like in Michigan, for example, which is like sort of the state that people always, talked about with that effect for obvious reasons, the, giant Arab American population, and the fact that it was such a squeaker in both 2016 and 2020. Snapshot of right now, Harris is way up in for Michigan. So does the VP pick reverse that? Maybe not. I mean, like it's also a question of, part of that's a question of how much people are paying attention to it. We're all paying attention to it, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean
the world is.
Yeah. And then part of that's a question of whether, bluntly, whether, Harris is activating enough other demographics that to make up for those lost Arab American votes, right? I mean, that's the ugly reality of it. And I guess this is good because it does transition us back to the Dershowitz clips I wanted to play. I think one thing that bothers me a little bit, and this does have to do with the diminishing hopes and diminishing expectations that we've been kind of talking about the whole time, right? They've been threading together this whole discussion, is that I see a lot of people feel the need to frame these arguments in terms of like horse race politics. That, it'll be like worse for Harris if she does this. And maybe, I mean, I also know the case the other way, which is that Pennsylvania is really important. He's unfortunately massively popular there, etc. But like, I don't know. It depresses me. Just argue that the on the merits of the thing itself, right? That it has to be like how the thing is going to play with some swing voter somewhere, right? It's like, honestly, some of that stuff is really hard to predict, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but like, I don't know. Some like I do hate. I'm not saying you, Andy, but like I do feel like there's this much bigger phenomena in like American political culture where it's like everybody becomes a little mini pollster, right?
Yes.
That like
yes.
Everybody's a horse race pundit, right? We're all spending our time arguing about like how things will play to somebody else. And it's like, I don't know, can we ever just argue about the thing?
Well, back to the whole Joe Biden thing as vice president. He was running with the black guy that's supposed to be the savior of colored folks everywhere. And Joe Biden is the guy that locked up colored folks everywhere. So again, does it really matter about the VP pick? I think people are so plugged in with politics that are watching these shows. I want to. Yep. That's the most important part. If you're watching stuff like this, you're probably really plugged in. You're like 9/11 plugged in, right?
Yeah. If you, I've said this before, but like, if you ever need the cold reality check, open an incognito private browser window, so it doesn't know who you are, and go to YouTube and see what videos it shows you.
You'll be like, what is this? Yeah.
It's like, the videos, the algorithm just serves up to, I have no idea who's watching right now, right? Average American, here are the videos that Americans want to see. It's like, people, you know, not only as like Sam Cedar, whoever, not that, but like, you know, people that we think of as like, you know, globe spanning supervillains like your Ben Shapiro's or whoever, they're not that either, right? It's like that's for politics nerds.
Yeah, and there's not that many. You know, we're all a minority. So if you want to feel like a special snowflake, there you go. But go talk to people. You know, I feel comfortable that people watching these shows can walk up to someone at a coffee shop or, you know, their neighbor and say, sorry, the rapey dogs behind me got mad. And ask them about politics. Ben will tell you, because of what we do, when we go to downtown Rosarito, people know what we do, and sometimes they ask us about the world. And me personally, I like to hear what they have to say about the world.
Yeah.
And usually, I'm always shocked.
I had the breakfast the other day. And, I had looked up and watched Rogan.
Yeah, you watch you on Rogan. Yeah, so you know. We're not to say that we're like walking around like celebrities. It's just that people like to talk to us, regardless of where we are, about how they view the world, and it doesn't jive with what we talk about on these shows, and it doesn't jive with what people think is trending. And the real world is a great place. I'm trying to spend more time there. It's hard now that I'm trying to write more, but you know, I love the real world. It's cool. People are awesome.
At least go right in a coffee shop. You can meet some real world on your way there and on your way back.
Yeah, it helps us. Someone says, so TIR is a fraud. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's just that the things that people are really concerned about, again, don't jive with what might be trending or what might even be going on in the minds of talking heads. According to talking heads, the most important thing in the world was Donald Trump getting shot until it wasn't. And it didn't take long for it to not be the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you said in your essay, it felt as if 2024 Trump re-election was a foregone conclusion. It just made cinematic sense. He rode into the White House walking off the set of a scripted reality show. Maybe he'd make a return to office in the back of a sniper's missed attempt on his life. And, you know, this is like, yeah, this felt, you know, that feeling, which I mean, I'm definitely exempting myself from this. I definitely thought this.
Yeah.
When I first saw that image.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's
yeah.
Like, oh shit, that's it. Right. That's the election. Because again, on a cinematic level, it's like, yeah, this is like the montage at the beginning of the movie about, you know, the, you know, strongman, you know, character who's, you know, dead zoning his way into the presidency, you know, at the beginning, right? You know, that like, like this feels like this key moment in the montage where there's a near miss assassination attempt and he's got blood running down his face, but he's, you know, surrounded by the Secret Service. He's got his fist in his hair. It's like, yeah, that feels like such a game changer. But then you remember, you know, a few days pass and reality sets in. You're like, oh wait, Lindsey Graham, who in the chat for this episode, I think, because I think he runs the Alpha Bunga Bunga account. He, you know, like, you know, every once in a while, like I love this. Like he'll tell me because he does like he's a DJ for bar trivia.
Okay.
And so every once in a while, when something like politically massive happens, and I think he even might have said this about the assassination, he'll be like, yeah, the bar last night, nobody was talking about it. Right? Like, he's like, yeah, I tried to tell a joke, it didn't land, nobody knew.
Really?
Like I don't know that that last part, I don't think he said about this specific thing, right? I'm sure people did know, right? But like, but it's always a useful reality check. And I think that the reality check for the assassination is like, yeah, that's a big dramatic cinematic moment, but also the like electoral politics in the United States has gotten crazily polarized. over the last few decades, like to an extent that would have been hard to imagine, like in the 90s. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, people have already had 9 years to decide whether they support Trump or not. Like he just didn't have that much room to grow in the polls.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see people in your chat talking about the debate, the Trump versus Kamala debate, and she's going to get exposed. And again, these are like sports metaphors.
Yeah,
and that's not really how debates work.
No.
If you really want to think about how debates work, if you're bored, if you're that politically plugged in, and if you haven't done it 5 times today already, go back and watch Reagan versus Mondale. And then watch
7 for me, but yeah.
You're going for a twofer. Watch Reagan versus Mondale and watch the post game. And all of that stuff should be available on YouTube because Reagan's library has pretty much everything he did on while he was president for those 8 years. It's pretty extensive. Watch that. And when you hear the people talk about the debate afterwards, they don't talk about any arguments made by Ronald Reagan. They talk about how affable of a human he is. So think about this for a second. When we talk about empty suits and idiots and who's going to get shown up and this, that, and the other, and whatever sports or battle euphemism we want to use for a debate, and that was then, this is, I was like, no, nothing's changed. Why are any of these people not empty suits? They're all empty suits. Barack Obama was an empty suit. All that matters is how you're viewed to the people that are going to vote for you anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you said earlier, like, I think every now that somebody is so unprepared that the showing up thing does, like that there is some version of that happens. Like the classic is Rick Perry, right? He was gonna abolish 2 departments, the federal government, and he forgot which ones they were. Like I think that actually killed him. But yeah, it takes something extreme for that to happen. And I would also say, right, I saw somebody in the chat saying, I can't find it now, but said something about, oh, do you remember Trump versus Clinton? It's like, I do remember Trump versus Clinton, and I actually don't think that was that great for Trump. I think that the Republican primary debates were great for Trump. That, I mean, I will freely confess to finding Trump funnier than you do, but like, but I think him doing his particular shtick and mowing through the Republican insulting all the Republican candidates and all that. That was very entertaining, and he really shone in that format. Trump Clinton, I don't know that it actually moved anything very much. And I also think that Kamala is, I mean, I know I'm doing exactly what I just criticized, right? Just to do a little horse race punditry here for a moment, right? I don't think Kamala is anything like as unlikable as Hillary Clinton. I actually don't think it's
she does not have the baggage. She does not have the baggage. Hillary Clinton has been unlikable. Someone said, Jess, who was here for a few weeks, Ben, said Hillary Clinton is everybody's first wife. And that's why she's so hated. She's the first wife you don't like. People didn't like Hillary Clinton when she was Bill Clinton's wife. She changed her hair to try to be more likable for Bill Clinton. People forget how utterly unlikable that woman was. Kamala Harris is not Hillary Clinton. She's thirst trap Oprah. Just call her what she is.
And like, the Trumpism that I've heard him test out for Kamala is cackling Kamala. And it's like, I don't know, man. I think that the fact that Kamala laughs a lot and Donald Trump absolutely never, ever under any circumstances laughs is not necessarily a contrast that looks good for him.
Right? The villain role that he was able to play in 2016, the anti-hero villain that he was able to play, you can't do that forever, because you will need a hero every so often to play off of. And he's got to play off of kind of a true baby face in all of the kayfabe terms, right? There's a heel, which is the bad guy, and a baby face, which is the good guy. And Kamala really, right now, with the white suit, I don't think that was accidental, is the baby face that's going to defeat the bad guy. If he wants to keep playing villain with JD Vance as a running mate, you know, then you're going to get treated like the villain. And I don't know if he's used to that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, you know, whatever you think of Matt Taibbi's political evolution in the last few years, and it doesn't fill me with joy. I did like his book, Hate Inc.
Yeah.
A lot. Actually, I thought it was a really good book. And he goes into wrestling analogies, you know, extensively in that book. And, you know, talk about like how Trump is doing this kind of archetype of like the audience that fall in love with. And I think that that's true, right? You know, that it's like, yeah, that there's the, you know, that there's a sort of, yeah, there's a way that heel character can end up being very appealing, right? You know, in the, you know, in the right matchup, right? But I don't know that it is. I mean, I think if you have somebody who basically reads, and I'm not talking about how I want the world to work here, clearly, right? Like, I think, you know, I think that Kamala Harris backing off of all of, you know, those crazy ideas she used to have about giving Americans jobs in healthcare and showing no sign whatsoever that she's willing to stop material assistance for, you know, the war crimes in Gaza. Like, I think like, yeah, if the world worked the way I want it to, all this stuff would kill her, right? But yeah, I don't think it works the way I want it to. I think that I think the way it works right now in this moment, I think that obviously there's a big part of the electorate that has undying Jonestown level loyalty to Donald Trump, and nothing will change that, no doubt whatsoever. But I also think there's a lot of Trump fatigue. I think a lot of people think he's mean-spirited and, you know, don't like him. And I think that when it was senile grandpa president, that was different. But I think that once you swap out that with, oh, here's like a boring Democrat who seems like she enjoys life, right? You know, that's like, it's like, I'll look at her like laughing and joking like human beings do.
Yeah.
You know,
Thirst Trap Oprah. That's why I call her Thirst Trap Oprah. And again, you know, someone's talking about how she's going to get destroyed because Trump is so mean. Why do you think that's going to work? Like, first of all, the debates don't matter that much. But second of all, why would that work to someone's advantage to bully someone on that stage that is a likable character? That's not how that plays out in most people's minds.
Yeah, people have to really dislike somebody to enjoy watching them being bullied, right? If you're a little on the fence about somebody, or you even kind of like them, then that's just going to make you not like the bully. I mean, that's how, you know, in the you know, in none of those 80s movies was anybody in the audience, you know, rooting for, you know, the crew of tall blonde guys at the ski slope, you know, who were
the betas. Nobody wanted the alpha betas to beat the nerds, the trilams.
Yeah. There was, you know, I don't think there was anybody who was like, oh man, I was pulling for Biff the whole time, but then Marty, you know,
that's how you have to look at it, through that overly simplistic lens, and that's kind of what I write about in Kayfabe, which is, it is the trilam nerds against the stronger alpha betas, and you want to see the nerds win. You want to see Oprah win. Kamala Harris is positioning herself to be everybody's fun, light-skinned aunt that smells real nice, especially after she stopped smoking in the 90s. So, you know, like
that is absolutely yes. Of like who Kamala reads as like interpersonally.
Like, you see her with the
I always liked that Kamala. Just
Kamala's so nice. My mom always said me call her Miss Kamala for some reason. I don't know why I gotta talk like a slave around her, but for some, you know, but it's this perception of, because she's such an empty suit. I don't disagree with anyone calling her an empty suit.
Sure.
I've been saying it forever. It's just hilarious that people think that empty suitness about her is going to be to her detriment. It's like, no, that means you can project anything onto her you want. Anything. I don't think she's gonna I know she's gonna have a good presidency. I think if she wins, it's gonna be a nightmare for her the moment she has to speak publicly. But I do think she can beat Donald Trump.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, I've acknowledged that my crystal ball's in the shop. And 3 months, who knows? The dynamics could change again. But snapshot of this moment, that feels absolutely right to me. Well, moving on from horse race to actually talking about the thing itself. It's not really a great fit, but a good friend of mine just did a little 10-minute cable news debate with somebody I regard as I don't know, like a smellier version of a comic book supervillain, and I do want to watch this. So this is the first clip of Anna versus Alan Dershowitz.
Professor, what is the plus minus for you in terms of the Democratic leaders and other members deciding not to go there today?
Well, the vast majority of Democratic members of Congress came and applauded. Benjamin Netanyahu gave a great speech to the American public and to the world. And he had some very good points about the protesters. The protesters are calling for a ceasefire. Israel has accepted the ceasefire. Egypt has accepted it. Qatar has accepted it. The United States has accepted it. Both Biden and Blinken have said the only thing that stands between a ceasefire is Hamas. So why aren't these protesters protesting Hamas? Why are they joining with Hamas? Why are they supporting Hamas? Why are they not claiming that if they're pro-Palestinian, the best thing that could happen to the Palestinian people would be for the end of Hamas's military, tyrannical, and other rule, where it kills so many Palestinians, uses Palestinians as human shields. I support the Palestinian people. And I think if you support the Palestinian people and you ultimately want to see a two-state solution, you have to get rid of Hamas. They are the biggest barrier to any kind of a peace that would include Saudi Arabia, all the other Arab states. Netanyahu talked about expanding the Abraham Accords and making a kind of regional Abraham Accords. That's a very good step forward. But right. Hamas stands in the way and the protesters stand in the way.
All right. Let me bring Anna in. Anna, first of all, thank you for taking the opportunity. It's good to have you back on the show. Let's flip it a little bit. You could argue that Netanyahu has no business addressing a joint session of Congress with what's going on in the Middle East right now and how our politics are trying to balance the equities there.
Let me just start off by saying that I'm an American, a proud American who loves my fellow Americans regardless of what their political views are. And I find it absolutely deplorable that a leader of a foreign country would come onto American soil and smear the entirety of the pro-peace, pro-ceasefire protesters based on a few outliers who might engage in behavior that I myself disagree with. These are Americans engaging in their First Amendment rights, protesting in favor of a ceasefire following the slaughter of innocent civilians, 2/3 of which are women and children in the Gaza Strip. These are individuals who are protesting the annexation of Palestinian territory in the West Bank, which had absolutely nothing to do with the atrocities that were committed on October 7th. And I will not sit here and buy into the lies that Netanyahu has been engaging in ceasefire negotiations in good faith, when time and time again you hear the Biden administration claiming that Netanyahu has agreed to a ceasefire. Then Netanyahu reneges and says, no ceasefire until we wipe out Hamas, which the IDF, the head of the IDF, has made abundantly clear is an unrealistic goal. Yoav Gallant has said that himself. The fact of the matter is Netanyahu wants to keep this war going. He wants to expand it to a broader regional war, which is why he kept talking about Iran over and over again. He wants to drag our men and women and our military into fighting that war against Iran, which would be absolutely atrocious and would definitely risk their lives. We need to call a spade a spade. That speech was full of lies and defamatory comments about our people, about American citizens, and I will not stand for it.
So, this sounds very much like what happened.
Okay, one thing. Hold on, Professor. Hold on. Professor, hold on. 1 second.
Yeah.
1 second. I want to give each of you a chance to respond to each other, but
please
tighten it up so that we can get a couple of you back and forth. Go ahead, Professor.
The same argument was made when Winston Churchill came to America to ask the United States to help them fight against Nazism. And there were protests. Nazis protested. They had a First Amendment right. And Churchill attacked the protesters. Churchill was right. People like the guest here and some of the people who protested there would be protesting Churchill because Churchill was a colonialist. You can make up these stories. The point is Israel has only wanted peace. It has sought peace. It has responded the way any democracy would respond to the kind of barbarism and butchery that occurred on October 7th and that continues to occur because rockets are being sent by Hezbollah, by the Houthis, by Hamas, and Israel has the right to respond.
And then we go into the minute that we already played you of him calling her a bigot. And then finally, we end up like this.
Anna Kasparian is no bigot, okay? You can disagree. She's not a bigot. Anna, make your point.
And so is her total TV show. The Young Turks are a bunch of
She is not a bigot.
They are anti-Semitic, and I'm going to call a spade and a bigot, whether you like it or not.
But it's not about whether I like it or not. It's about whether it's accurate or not. And yes, please, Anna, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. Listen, those who are protesting the war crimes that are currently being committed in the Gaza Strip are concerned about, excuse me, sir, I'm speaking. They're concerned about the innocent children who are being slaughtered. They want the war to stop. And when we talk about democratic leadership, like Nancy Pelosi, by the way, deciding to not attend that speech, the reason why she did that is because the family members of the hostages want a ceasefire. They want the hostages to come home. They want a ceasefire. 71% of Israelis in Israel want Netanyahu to either step down now or immediately after the war. He is not a popular politician. He knows he's not a popular politician, and he is prolonging this war specifically to hold on to power despite the lives that are being risked in the IDF that he purports to care about, the hostages who are being killed as a result of the IDF's aerial bombardment of the Gaza Strip. And we got to tell the truth about what's really going on here. I will not stand for any foreign leader coming onto American soil to trash our American people, regardless of what their political views are, period.
You would have opposed Churchill. That's fine.
I understand.
You would have opposed Churchill, you would have opposed...
No, I would. Listen. First of all, comparing the protesters today to Nazi sympathizers is all you've got, Dershowitz. That's all you've got. And honestly, I am not surprised at all that you don't care about the children that are being slaughtered in Gaza. Because your history does indicate that you don't care too much about children, right?
Let's end it. Let's end it there. Anna, we're going to end it there. You are not bigoted because of what you believe. Professor Dershowitz, Professor Dershowitz is not about killing children either. This is an ugly situation. It's probably going to get more ugly, but we got to conduct ourselves as much we can if we want to get to a better place without being as ugly as what's happening on the ground. Anna, I appreciate you making the case.
Thank you.
Professor, listen, I'm with you. Hamas has to go. How you get that to happen, I don't know. Ceasefire would be best for everybody. I don't know that it's going to happen anytime soon. And it's not unfair to argue that Netanyahu, that's not his main objective at this point in time. I don't think that's unfair. But it is also equally unfair to make it look like Israel did this unprovoked. That's not Anna's position, but for many it is. And there are a lot of bigots out there. She's just not one of them. Anna Kasparian, thank you very much. Professor Dershowitz, I love you. Thank you for coming on to make the case.
Yeah, that's I don't know if Cuomo in the moment didn't get what she was saying about given your history, you probably don't care very much about children. Or maybe he just decided to diplomatically pretend not to get that.
Whoa. When was this?
This was like, yeah, it was like right after Netanyahu's speech.
So was it last week?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Is that no, that's not CNN. What is that? Newswatch?
Yeah. It's News Nation. That's where Chris Cuomo's show is now. I've been on there a couple times. I've never been on Cuomo's, but I've been on Dan Abrams, which but yeah, it's.
I wonder why they go after Anna.
Well, I mean, this is what Alan Dershowitz does, right? I mean, like this is, if you disagree with him about this, it's because you love terrorists. You're an anti-Semite. It's kind of anything but talk about the thing itself, right? Because when what you're trying to defend is, more kids having died in the last 9 months than in like all the war zones in the world for like 4 years before that. It's really hard to do that on the merits, right? It's a lot better to it's a lot better to attack the motivations of the person that you're talking about. But also, like, I don't know. I mean, again, this is up for being hypothetical tactical advice to Trump earlier. But if for some reason I was going to have a heart-to-heart with Alan Dershowitz about how we should approach these things, it's like, I don't know that somebody whose name appears on the Epstein flight logs as much as yours does should turn conversations into like who's a worse person contest.
Just lay low, brother.
Exactly.
Just lay low. That's all you have to do. Just lay low. He didn't want to lay low. He wanted to yell at. I'm sure he refers to her as like dingy broad. I can see Dershowitz saying that. Somebody said spade a spade. Someone said, I'm sure Dershowitz called many people a spade. He's an interesting character, man. He was a lovable dude at one point in time when he was.
I remember that.
Klaus Van Bülow off that murder charge.
Did you watch the movie?
I've never seen the movie. I've only seen the Bill Curtis narrated American Justice on it and another true crime thing.
I've watched it twice recently.
Jesus, what's the movie?
Twice recently.
Yeah, it was what is that movie called? For some reason it's not the Criterion Collection, but I watched it and then I'm like, oh, I gotta talk about this on Bad Takes. So then I watched it again so I could be like up on it. And it's got one of those like really forgettable titles, but it is this
is not a comfortable thing to admit, but I can remember a time in my life where I had vaguely positive thoughts about that guy. Like
Alan Dershowitz.
Alan Dershowitz, yeah.
Yeah, he was getting people off of death row and murder charges.
Yeah, that was actually a plot point of the movie. Was just like, hey, these black kids. They never show them throughout the entire movie, but he's like really upset when like one of their appeals didn't go through, and like it's just like, but I really care about these black kids who only get mentioned and you know have to identify them just as the black kids.
Wasn't he part of OJ's team?
He was, yeah. Yep.
Speaking of black kid, there you go. You know, the guy for 5 minutes was kind of on the right side of history. We didn't know his politics. We didn't care about his politics.
Yeah, Reversal of Fortune is the name of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, he always claimed to care a lot about, like, it was always kind of part of the Dershowitz bio, right? That he was like a big civil liberties guy.
Yeah.
I think if you kind of ask some follow-up questions about what exactly he ever did for civil liberties, it's a little unclear, but like that was always part of the presentation of him. I mean, he seemed to spend more of his time, you know, defending rich guys who killed their wives, but
as one does to pay for all the poor black people you're supposed to free, right? That's how that works. Like you gotta get some rich guys off, and then you can go give back. And just walk into court one day and be like, I'm your lawyer. Like in law, like SVU always has this turn for a lawyer that'll defend all these criminals. And they'll talk to Olivia Benson, and I've been on the wrong side for too long. Now I want to be with you and free this accused colored person of some sort of sexual assault. Like that's like those are the good episodes. When that happens, it's like, oh, that guy's gonna be working on the good side. Like what?
Yeah,
it's like if Destro. It's like when Destro did something nice for GI Joe. It's like your whole head was effed up for the day when that happened. Andy knows what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just blows your mind that Destro actually has you know some kind of moral. The conscience,
yeah.
Mikey Love says you just got to get some rich guys off. Evergreen and applicable across many industries.
I said something real horrible in a text I sent you earlier today that I had to write in parentheses. That's what she said, because it was just so, whatever wording it was so bad. I was like, just here.
Small, but you can blow up on your phone.
Yeah, it's gonna. I knew I said something pretty like, oh shit, let me just write that in there before one of them thinks it in their mind.
Yeah. Also, by the way, like it seemed like a big part of Dershowitz's appeal is that's like whatever else was true about this guy, he was supposed to be smart. And like, what is he doing in that debate? It's like, oh, it's just in history. So everything was it's like, oh, I just had laid out some general principle. Yeah, but would you say that about Nazis? It's like, well, no, man. The Nazis were really bad. I would make exceptions to a lot of things for Nazis.
You know, that's why I couldn't. When you do that kind of stuff, like it's one thing, and Ben can speak to this. When you do these debates, and I've seen it, you know, you get allowed sometimes some back and forth. But when you're doing a thing on like real TV like that, it's, you know, everything's different, and it's harder to fire back like that when you hear all that insane stuff, because they just cut you off. I'm surprised she got to say as much as she did.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the art of cable TV appearances, is to you know, get in what you need to as quickly as all possible, since and to, you know, yeah, because it's almost nothing, and then the segment is over. I mean, especially if you come from what we do, because like, the nature of podcasts is, right now we're 42 minutes overtime, whatever. Right? That's fine. You can do that. The nature of cable news is, we've got to go to commercial in the next 3 minutes.
Wrap it up. Yeah, we don't care what you were saying. We don't care what he said. Called you and your mom, all kind of pieces of shit. Doesn't matter. We'll see you next time, Jason. It's like, oh wow, that was my one shot to go back on cable news, and I effed up.
Yeah, no, I think that the 2 times that I did it, which were both Dan Abrams. That's the only cable show I've ever been on. The second one was about the Supreme Court stuff, and that was okay, although I felt like because what I was trying to say wasn't sort of cleanly on either side of the narrative that they were kind of framing the segment around. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt like they just didn't quite know what to do with that. So it was like, fine, it was respectful, but it was just like I kind of felt like what I just said was being translated back to me at the end. It's like, I don't think that's what I said. And then the other one was the debate with the guy from American Conservative after Kissinger died. And that one I felt good about, but it's also like, that's kind of the perfect subject to do that about. Cause like, I don't, it's Henry Kissinger. Like you can just kind of like, it's not that hard to like pretty quickly rattle off some of the guy's greatest hits.
Ooh, he's got some big ones. I totally forgot. He died this year, huh?
He died last year. Well, hold on. It was definitely while I was in LA, but it could have been 2024. I'm not sure. No, it was 2023. It was. I'm like 95% sure it was 2023 that Kissinger died.
Oh, Andy's looking it up. Andy, I see him typing. Strong says last year.
Yeah. I mean, it was actually really funny because I think like 3 people that I knew called me on the phone to make sure I knew Kissinger was dead. So for whatever you want to get out of that, it's seems like there are a lot of people in my life whose like immediate thought when they heard Kissinger die, I was like, oh,
Ben would appreciate this.
Ben would appreciate this.
Yeah, man. Like what is the defining moment of 2024? Like when when CNN does all those retrospectives of a year, and they have all these moments that just when you think of it, like, oh man, that's so 2024 for
the
you.
What guy shooting?
The Turkish shoot in the Olympics.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, as Skellum says, reasons Kissinger was bad is definitely a target-rich environment. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always think of that Gore Vidal thing where he said he was at the mural, like a vision of hell, and he sees Henry Kissinger up in front of him looking at the mural, and he turns to the guy next to him and says, "Oh, check it out, he's apartment hunting."
They never had a debate, from my understanding, right?
No. I don't think Kissinger really did that. He was pretty good at surrounding himself with people who are going to kiss his ass. So good. Good for him, I guess. He very thoroughly, very, very thoroughly got away with it. Yes, Sean Hitchens did write a book about Henry Kissinger, Trial of Henry Kissinger, which is basically Hitchens' last kind of unambiguously good book. But it's definitely worth reading. Well, I am. If you're sad because we're about to come to the end of what you think is the only Ben and Jason on YouTube you're going to watch this week, I have some great news for you. So I wrote an article for Damage Magazine called "Left Identitarianism is Also a Mere World," which is a review of Naomi Klein's book Doppelganger, and I am going to be talking about that on This Is Revolution on Saturday at what time?
9 a.m.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Pacific time. 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, 9 a.m. Pacific. So yeah, noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. for me. But you know, I'm gonna set an alarm and make some coffee because that's friendship.
Someone said Ben and Jason's ab cab cooking should be a thing. Do you know what ab cab cooking is, Ben?
I do not know what ab cab cooking is though.
All cock and balls. You got to cook naked.
That doesn't sound safe. It's like hot oil and stuff. That's
The apron's for. Cock's out, but you're wearing an apron.
That doesn't sound safe. That's the whole thing, Ben. That's why it's an adventure. It's ab cab cooking, all cock and balls, dude.
Yeah.
Yank says, yeah. That is the fun. Can you avoid the grease splatters?
That's some high stakes fun.
I was gonna film some of it while Jess was here.
For your OnlyFans.
No, I was just gonna put it on YouTube. I'm not even trying to be funny, dude. I'm seriously just gonna put it on YouTube. I don't have the time to think to navigate.
I don't think YouTube allows that.
Dude, I've seen so many pairs of tits on YouTube. You can put some ball bags on there. To make it equal. But I didn't know where it was going to.
Let's pretend like this is the only reason I wouldn't do this. Is that I don't think the YouTube algorithm would let me get away with it.
I seriously, she was so worried. Like legit, she says, I really don't think you should do this. And then she made me worried because I think I ended up burning. You know how sometimes I'll just be doing stuff and not paying attention, and I think I dropped a bunch of fries in the hot oil. There was a splashback, and I was like, "Oh wow, this I can really, my junk could look like Freddy Krueger's face if I do this wrong." And so the plan was to get an apron though, and then just have no pants on. So you just turn around and you just like pow cheeks.
Yeah,
that seems safer.
That's none of this is going to happen, but yeah.
You don't know how desperate I am to fucking pay some of these bills.
All right, everybody. Jason, you have a new Patreon tier for the essay series.
I don't know if it's a new tier as much as it's just like a certain tier. I think Gene named all the tiers, so it's Teenage Anarchist and up. Gets a free, like the layout that I made for it. I went and used all the tools that Patreon provides us, and I made a cool little magazine layout.
Everybody sign up for that tier, so Jason doesn't have to do anything unsafe in the kitchen.
I'm gonna go peel some potatoes and make some French fries to eat with my pastor quesadilla that I got before I got on air.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
I might have to make a pastor quesadilla run.
You know the spot. Hurry up, dude. There's a festival going on this weekend.
Okay.
A very large music festival. Look at my face. A very large music festival is going on this weekend, so it's already crazy downtown.
Yeah, I actually had already been thinking I might do that tonight. That I was in my original formulation, I was thinking an asada quesadilla, but I might actually go for pastor.
Do it. There's so many people there. They're keeping them so fresh right now. It's nuts.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Andy, you want to talk about Jack Posobiec real quick before we go off air?
Yeah, I tweeted out just a stupid comment about Josh Shapiro, and all of a sudden, didn't think anything of it, and like a few minutes later, like I'm just getting notification after notification after notification, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm seeing like all these American flag retweets, And I'm like what's happened here? And so I look, and apparently Jack Posobiec found my tweet somehow, probably just because he was looking at Josh Shapiro stuff, and retweeted it. And so I then changed my name, of course, to Jack Posobiec as a neo-Nazi, because I just thought it'd be hilarious to have that right smack dab in the middle of his Twitter feed. And I know before the show, it was still up there on his Twitter feed. So go there on Jack's friend of the show, Jack Posobiec's Twitter account, and like it there.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's, well, when Nathan Robinson is on in 2 weeks, next week is going to be next week we are going to have Matt McManus and Daniel Tutt on to talk about Lukash. But the week after, we're going to get Nathan, and I think we are going to be talking about, among other things, this article that he wrote about a blurb that J.D. Vance wrote for a book that was co-written by Jack Posobiec, which on humans, which is apparently like a book that says all teachers unions should be made illegal, that it praises Franco and Augusto Pinochet as people who are really good, I don't know, fighting the left or the woke mind virus or what have you. So yeah, look forward to that in a couple of weeks with Nathan. But meanwhile, I think that I think that we've reached the point of the night when I'm gonna go get a pastor quesadilla, maybe pop on Jeepers Creepers 2 or some equally highbrow cinema, and
all the Charles Bronson and American Ninja movies are on Tubi for free. Something to think about.
All right. Well, on that note, left is best.